Hello everybody, this is Old Soldier. Today we have a guest on the channel. This is the first episode where we've had an episode solely based on this, so the episode features on our guest. So our guest today is Kirk. Hello Kirk.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for coming on the channel.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to be here.
I'm happy you're here too. So we're going to talk about radios today and kind of your past a little bit, but so Kirk, you and we served together in Special Forces, right?
Yes.
And we were on the same company, different teams.
Yes.
And you were a SF Commo man, which is an 18 Echo.
Yes.
And you served on the military free fall team.
Yes, I did.
And so you're not only a Commo man, you're an old school Commo man that had to pass International Morse code, right?
Yes, had to pass the Morse code, and old. Yes, very old.
So this is really two old soldiers, but one old soldier is much better about talking about radios. So, and can you remember when you were at IMC, what like your send receive, what the standard was to graduate?
The standard to pass the test there was 15 groups per minute, or words per minute.
And then how big was a group? Was it 5 characters?
It was 5 characters, yes, of letters, numbers.
And then did that weed out a lot of folks?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, I bet it did. And then as a Commo man, you probably have, so in SF it was always, they talk about Commo rucksacks being heavier than you know what, right?
Yes, they were. The radio was heavy, yes.
Right. And batteries.
And batteries.
And then you can cross-load some of that stuff, but still, it's
it was a team effort. So yeah, you had to spread the weight around, because one person carrying that weight is unfair.
That's correct.
So you'd spread it out. Everyone would carry a little bit of the load.
That's exact. And then the other thing too is if you cross-load, so you don't want to have all the mission vital equipment with one guy. So if something happens to him,
absolutely. We always had 2 radios, 2 sets of batteries.
Right.
It was doubled up on everything.
And then as part of that, you also had to develop Commo plans.
Yes, we did.
Communication plans, both from inside the team and then with our communication with the next higher headquarters.
Yes.
And that could be thousands of miles away, correct?
Yes, they could.
And you've deployed. Can you tell us some of the places? Well, you deployed overseas. I've
been to Honduras, Thailand, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Singapore. Geez, I wasn't expecting to answer that one.
I'm sorry. Sorry to surprise you with some stuff. But I'm just trying to say that you've had experience making Commo over long distances.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, Kirk, I really appreciate you coming on the channel. I have about said on the show, but on the channel, because you have an expertise with radios. I mean, everybody, especially in Special Forces, like I know a little bit about, emergency medicine. I know a little bit about radios. I was a 18 Bravo weapons man. I know a lot, hopefully, or did know a lot. I don't know anymore. But you really, for the team, you the 2 Commo men on the team, they're the subject matter experts.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then today, we're both former action guys, but sometimes we think we're action guys, but we're really all former action guys. But so we talk from time to time. We go out and have coffee, and then you were talking the other day about in the modern world, the number one thing with communication is obviously cell phone.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. But you also you're a ham. You got your ham license, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So you also have a little bit of experience. I just want to talk real briefly. Now I've been working on my ham forever, but I do have my GMRS. So I just want to talk a little bit about FRS, which is Family Radio Service, and GMRS, which is General Mobile Radio Service.
Yes.
And then these are some radios. These are some old radios of mine. These are old. These are over 20 years old. And can you just talk just a little bit about those, or give me your thoughts on those?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I have a pair that are about 20 years old as well, and they're Motorola also, the Motorola Talkabout series, Motorola still makes a Talk About series.
Right. I think all, like the pair of this one broke. I think all of these are the Motorola Talk About. So it's pretty safe to say that those are like some of the most popular.
And even these, I've held on to these for years. Again, maybe 20 years old, maybe a little more. And about 10 years ago, I lost the cord to charge them up, so I can't even get them to work now.
Yeah.
But I found them stashed with a bunch of my other old gear in the basement. Thought I'd bring them over for the show here.
Well, I appreciate that. Mine are still, the partner to this one broke. These things still work. And, you know, FRS, the big thing is they're limited on power.
Yes,
right?
they are. Yes,
and
they are.
I believe it's 2 watts and under.
For FRS, yes, 2 watts.
2 watts. And
Maximum of 2 watts.
Maximum of 2 watts. And then there is some interoperability between GMRS and FRS. There's some
the FRS and the GRMS radios, they use the same frequencies.
Right.
The difference being is the power output that the radios can produce.
So I got my GMRS license, and then some of the people who have seen some of the other episodes of the channel, like what I carry, my truck EDC, the GMRS requirements, you have to have a license. You have to be licensed by the FCC and pay a fee, but they're, I believe the maximum on those are 50 watts. And like my one that I have, my GMRS radio that I have in my truck, it's 15 watts. So
Correct.
As a Commo man, more wattage should equal clearer and more range. Is that right?
More wattage gives you, yes, a farther transmission range. Yes.
Okay.
So you can theoretically, the more power you can put out, the farther distance you can communicate, and you can push your radio energy through obstacles a farther distance. Now the FRS GRMS, if I can slide this
Sure.
into view here, these are the old FRS GMRS frequencies. Now this changed in 2017, but our old radios we were talking about earlier, they fit with this. And they only transmitted at 0.5 watt maximum, and I just got this off the internet from the Radio Reference Wiki. But before 2017, your FRS radios were up here, and they were essentially, it was only 14 channels, 14 frequencies that the FRS radios would use, and your GMRS radios were capable of having a little more power output on certain frequencies, and GRMS also allowed you to use repeaters.
Which is a handy thing.
Which is a handy thing. It allows you to cover more area, to talk over a larger distance.
But you have to have a repeater.
But you have to have the repeater. The repeater has to be, of course, operational. And the repeater can put out a maximum of 50 watts. You're not going to find a handheld that puts out 50 watts.
Right. You know, I seriously don't know. Is it possible for like a vehicle mounted radio, would they be up to 50 watts? Is that something that they would do or no?
Someone could make one.
Okay.
I don't know why you would want one that
Okay.
powerful, because it's just a pretty big amplifier. Just the equipment itself would be large.
Okay, so it brought pretty much home base station.
Correct.
Okay, that's a good. And then, so, but the FRS really, they're kind of like line of sight radios.
Yes.
Okay, so casual use, camping, hunting.
Yes.
You know, in my family, we've tried to use them on road trips a couple
Yes.
times. They don't work the best.
No.
No, but for walking around
For short range communication, yeah, they work wonderful. They do exactly what they're supposed to do. You could be at the campsite babysitting the brisket on the barbecue, and your friends are out fishing or on the boat, and you got a way to talk to them, and they work great for that purpose.
Yeah, I know. We use them for safety checks, to check in with people to make sure they're all right and to confirm location, so they work
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
But like if you have a big obstacle between, they're not going to like go over a large hill or a mountain. It's going to be tough.
And well, as they say, the best way to do is to test it. Go try it and see if it works.
Always
But-
good advice.
But with the FRS radios, yeah, the low power handhelds. And now I'm going to switch again. This is old. This is prior to 2017. I'm going to show you a new one. Again, this is from the Radio Reference Wiki, just right off the internet. This is the current since 2017 FRS Gmrs frequency table.
Interesting.
Now, currently FRS and Gmrs, they all share the same frequencies. The differences become evident in the type of radios you can get and the features that are on the radios. Again, they use the same frequencies. However, on FRS, which you don't need to get a license for, they can put out a maximum of 2 watts. Now, that does not mean you go buy a current Motorola Talkabout or a Midland and it's going to put out 2 watts. You got to look up the specifications of,
for that
of the
particular
equipment
radio.
you're buying. Yes, but you can put out a maximum of 2 watts with the FRS radio. And if you have a Gmrs radio, again, it's using the same frequencies, but now you can put out a maximum of 5 watts. And other differences on the radio, the FRS radio will have a fixed antenna. The FCC does not allow that FRS radio to have a removable antenna.
Didn't know that.
Gmrs, you can remove and replace the antenna with a different antenna. Gmrs, again, you'll have the ability to use the repeaters.
Hey, Kirk, can I back you up again?
Oh, yes.
Some of your,
Yes.
so just one thing. So a big part of the 18 Echo course is that it's wave antenna theory,
Yes.
wave propagation and antenna theory, basically. And then I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to know what your feelings are on this statement. It's better to have an okay radio with a fantastic antenna than a fantastic radio with a so-so antenna. Do you agree with that, or is that out of your experience or not? Or if I'm wrong, just tell me I'm wrong.
I would wholeheartedly agree. In a lot of ways, they complement each other. It's a team effort between the radio and the antenna. You have a great radio, you remove the antenna, your great radio isn't going to work. You have an absolutely horrible radio, you have a great antenna, but it still might not work. So they kind of complement each other, but yes, the antenna is just as important as the radio is.
Okay, I just wanted to make that because I have seen some comment over the years. Some 18 Echoes do some amazing things with that they've jerry-rigged.
Yeah, the antenna is all about. Without an antenna, you're not going to communicate. Period. So it is a necessary thing to have. So yeah, to say having a great antenna, yeah, you need to have an antenna that's quality. In long-range communication, with no infrastructure. Without talking through repeaters, yeah, the quality of your antenna will be many times could be hit or miss with the person you're trying to talk to, them, you being able to hear them and them being able to hear you. Yes.
Yep, I think those are all worthy things worth talking about. So, we live in modern times and, everybody's got a cell phone. We both have cell phones and, you can talk about, that's a great tool, but sometimes either a natural disaster, they can go down, or I guess, coverage is getting better all the time.
Yes.
But you said the other day, that's your first means of contact.
I am a firm believer that the greatest communication device ever developed is the modern day smartphone. Yes, it is.
Okay. Hey,
and not again, it's not magic. Your cell phone is a radio, and it talks to a repeater. We call it a cell phone tower. So it's a radio and a repeater, and then the infrastructure. All those repeaters, those cell phone towers, are all interconnected, and now they're connected through the internet, and you can talk worldwide. And your cell phone is just a radio that talks to a repeater.
So that's what it is basically. And hey, just your own preference. Are you an Android guy or are you an Apple guy?
I'm married to the Apple ecosystem.
You're
yes.
married to the Apple ecosystem. Okay, that's worth saying. My family, my daughter loves Apple, and I guess I am. As people who have watched this channel, I'm a little bit of a technological rockhead, but somehow we make things work. So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit more on. I'm going to move this.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Let's look at the radios.
Thanks. So I guess I want to think about. So there's natural disasters, and the first thing that happens, you always hear is you have to have the infrastructure. You have to have the infrastructure. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
I'm kicking the camera.
Yeah, that's what That's part of the magic, Kirk.
I mentioned FRS and GMRS, they use the same frequencies, and I mentioned the difference is the power output that your radio can produce. Now, as you can see from this chart, channel numbers 8 through, what is it there, 14?
14.
Yeah, the FCC allows only a maximum of a half a watt on those channels.
On 8 through 14.
Or frequencies, yes, on 8 through 14, the maximum power output is only 0.5 watts. 1 through 7, and what is it here on the graph? It is 15 through 22. Your FRS radio can put out a maximum of 2 watts. Again, it doesn't mean your radio can do it, it's just that the FCC allows you to put out up to 2 watts. But on those other frequencies, the FCC is only allowing a half a watt.
And then I'm pretty sure 8 through 14, you don't have any interoperability with FRS and GMRS. That's 1 through 7, and then channels 1 through 7, and then 15 through 22. I'm reasonably sure that's correct. Is that right?
I'm sorry, you confused me. Interoperability?
So say you are FRS, okay, you're a guy with this no GMRS license, and you're on channel, like I said, 1 through 7, 1 through 7, or 14 through 22. I can be, but GMRS has those same channels.
It's
and
the same frequencies, and they're the same channel numbers, yes, on the radio.
And we can talk to each other.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right.
Yes, we
I just
can.
want to bring that up.
But yeah, that's something to note. So when you're out with your friends at the campsite, or you're on a ranch, and ranch or farm, and everybody uses radios, yeah, remember those frequencies, if you can't talk on these frequencies, but you can always talk on the others, well, that's because you can only put out a maximum of a half a watt on those frequencies in the middle there.
Okay.
So that's something to remember.
All right. Thanks for bringing that up, Kirk. That's a good point. So I want to talk a little bit now. So really just for general usage, it's not a bad idea if you have a group or a family for even just recreational, say you're going to the woods or camping or whatever, it's not idea to have a pair or a couple pair of FRS radios. Nope, that's your phone. Well, that's part of the magic.
Grand Junction's calling.
Do you need that? You need to get that, or you need to?
No.
Okay. All right. So it's not a bad idea, but they are what they are. Okay, and then if you wanted to get a little bit more range out of it, it would be GMRS, and GMRS are able to use repeaters. That's correct, right?
Yeah, the GMRS is able to use the repeat. Well, FRS, you can receive the repeater, but you cannot transmit to the repeater. Repeater uses 2 different frequencies. The repeater receives on one frequency, and the repeater transmits on another. So under FRS, you can receive that repeater signal, but you cannot talk directly to the repeater.
It's good to know. And that, like I said, the repeaters really can add lots and lots of range.
Correct.
Okay. So, like I said, it's just for casual use. And then if you were, you talk about developing commo plans, and I'm sure you've had part in developing very sophisticated commo plans in the past in the military. We're not going to talk about those, but
yes.
you've had a lot of training experience with that. But
yes.
For your family, you want to make it, or your group, whoever, for casual use. Just a simple thing was like, hey, if we're going to the woods, let's try to make communication, which everybody at the top of the hour, the first 10 minutes on top of the hour. That'd be a sample of a good simple commo plan.
Right, that'd be a time where everyone should be listening for their radio in case someone had traffic, someone wanted to contact you, give you a message that, at the top of every hour, you turn your radio on and you listen.
Right.
Now, why do we do that? Again, in the field, you can't recharge your batteries.
Right.
And so your radio is off all those other times, but we know to turn it on at a certain time and listen to see if there's somebody else who had a message to deliver. But otherwise, the radio gets turned off.
Right. And you could do, if nothing else, do a radio check, a communication check with them. Just a radio check, make sure you got.
Correct, just to get the status to make sure everybody's okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Always a good idea, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
It'd be no different than at the end of the workday, and you always call the missus, or you call the kids, or you call your friend to let them know you're on your way home. And if you don't call them, they get worried. So it's the same thing with the radios. You're out in the field. Again, today, you're just going to use your cell phone to make that contact. But if you don't have the cell phone, well, here, we're dating ourselves. We didn't always have cell phones during our lifetime.
right, I know. We
And,
really did. That used to be the thing, and there's a whole, as you know, there's a whole generation that's all they've known.
Correct.
So you had all this information. It
Cell
wasn't-
phones are great.
they can be great, but they can also they can.
So,
they can be a
so again,
distraction.
that whole now, if you have the ability to keep your radio charged up, if batteries aren't a problem, yeah, you can leave it on all the time. And your modern, even even this old one from 20 years ago, it has a call tone or an alert tone. So you may transmit to try to call your buddy out on the boat, or he's out hunting for jackrabbits, who knows what he's doing, but you call him and he doesn't hear you. How many times have we not heard our cell phone ring? So we put it on vibrate. It's the same thing with the radio. You're trying to call somebody, they can't hear it, but there's a call tone or an alert tone, so you can push the button
to get their attention.
and it sends out like a ring to all
Right.
the other radios to try to get their attention. So yeah, if you can keep your batteries charged up, or if that power is not a necessity, conserving the power, then yeah, you can leave your radio on all the time. Just like we leave our cell phones on all the time and we charge them up at night. Because yeah, once your cell phone goes dead, people feel lost.
Right.
Yeah, because the battery on your radio, i.e. your cell phone, it just went dead, and now we freak out because we got a dead battery on our cell phone. So it's the same with the radio. You can develop plans to conserve that battery power, which we had to do back in the day with the radios in the field. We couldn't recharge them.
Right.
And so yeah, we would only turn the radios on at a certain time of day, and if there was traffic, that traffic would come over, and if we needed to send a status report to let people know we were okay, that would be our time to send that status report.
Okay.
And after that, we turn the radio off and save those batteries.
Right. One thing, I don't know if you had any experience, and this is kind of my experience. So I have I have a couple of solar rechargers, and these run on AA's, these run on AAA's. I'm not sure, those are small enough. What are these rechargeable batteries?
It was a rechargeable. I believe it's a NiCad that's in there,
NiCad.
but I'm not sure.
Okay. But anyway, so I've experimented in the past, and you can see here this is actually a solar radio recharger. Now this thing is it's some Chinese stuff that I've had for years, but it's pretty fragile. It's pretty fragile for home use. And I do have some nickel metal hybrids batteries that work okay. Now this I have actually taken the field, and it's from Goal Zero. I don't know if you've had any experience with these, but these are rechargeable batteries. And unfortunately, in the summertime, it works okay. In the wintertime, I really can't give it too much because I don't get enough sunlight in the winter months. And the other thing being that the cold, I found in the cold weather, they just can't be relied upon. And then cold weather in general, I have to go to, better.
You have one really neat thing here that we didn't have back in the day, but it's now a modern thing that's available to virtually anyone, and that's your solar panel there.
Yeah, that is a big improvement. Back in our day, there was nothing. There was nothing like that. But yeah, that is a great way if you're in the field. And like I said, in the summer months, it worked after a fashion. But yeah, that technology really has gotten a lot better.
Yeah, I think, you know the stories to bring back bad memories for you.
I totally do.
The batteries we had on those HF radios in the military, they had to be recharged. We did not have solar panels. We had a hand crank generator.
What was that?
Again, to spread the pain amongst the team members, we all took turns hand cranking that generator to charge those batteries back up.
What was it? No, I hated that crank. I absolutely hate. What, do you remember the nomenclature?
I do not. I just remember it was a giant pain. Everybody hated it, and everybody had to take their turn on it.
Absolutely, universally hated. I remember cranking on those things, and yeah, you're spot on with that. So, Kirk, I want to kind of go a little bit now. I don't have a ham license, But it seems every time there's a natural disaster, everything goes down, the cell towers go down, but they still have hams. Ham license hams are still they're still in operation.
Yes.
And
in fact, the ham community is quite large.
right.
It is.
Including you, and I've been lazy. Now I bought this. This is like the cheapest. This is the Baofeng, and it's entry level. And I can, if not having a ham radio license, I can still have this and I can turn it on. I just legally, and I won't do it. Never have. Press the button to transmit. I can't do that because I'm not a licensed ham radio operator. All right, so we were talking. I'm sorry, had a little bit of power technical problem, but we were talking about ham radios. How in emergency everything goes down. How large the community is, the ham radio. How bad I am. I've been putting off getting my license, and you've got yours. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say on some of your your experiences with ham radio and basically the dealings with it with dealing with emergencies. I'd like to hear your views and your opinions on that.
Well, my experience, I'll say it again. I was just a little. I'd say I was a young buck, a little kid at the time. 18 to 20 years old. Didn't know anything about radio, and here I am in the military. How do you communicate from point A to point B? Now, when I'm at point A, and point B is several hundred to 1,000 or several thousand miles away, how do you communicate? So in the military, of course, they're trying to teach us about radio and how we can get a radio wave from me, where I am, to whoever the receiver is, however far distance that was. And so that was my introduction to ham radio. I didn't know that it was ham radio, but of course, hindsight being 20/20, that's exactly what it was. Present day, again, the greatest communication device ever invented is a modern day cell phone, and next year it'll be a better cell phone than it is today.
Right.
So when the cell phone goes down, how do I communicate from here to there? Now, the farther away there is, that's when it becomes a little different. We rely on the radio. Our cell phone communicates to a repeater. That repeater then is connected to an infrastructure that connects us to the person we want to send our message to. But what if there is no infrastructure? And so now that's ham radio and the long-range communication. And we're using Mother Nature. We're going to bounce a radio wave off of the ionosphere to travel great distances. Now, much of the communication would be called near vertical incidence skywave. You're sending a radio wave almost straight up. It bounces off the ionosphere and then comes back down a few hundred miles away. So
Kirk, I know you have to use them, but you're melting my brain with all those technical terms. Keep going, but I just want to let you know you're probably overgoing my technical. But keep going, brother. I love hearing this.
Well, let's just go back to emergency preparedness. When we want to communicate, we're just going to use a cell phone. We're going to send a text message. We're going to send a photo. We're just going to dial up our significant other's phone number. We're going to call them and tell them it's okay or whatever. But when the cell phone goes down,
and sometimes in emergencies, like cell towers, they get filled up. You can point to any large emergency, 9/11, where the cell towers you had problems getting coverage.
Yep, we have problem getting coverage. Yes. So your backup communication device. Now again, this is just me. My primary is the cell phone. But if the cell phone goes down, how do you communicate to somebody? Well, I either have to find another cell phone or whatever. But now what you can use is a radio. And probably the best way to look at this is what do you do when you're out of cell phone range and you want to talk to somebody who isn't within earshot of you, that you can't just talk to. And so that's where all these FRS, GMRS, or the handheld ham radios, like your Baofeng,
and then what type
or
of
this
radio
one I bought.
And what
this
is that?
Is an Anytone.
Minitone? And do you like that?
Anytone. I do like this, but now it's the only one I've ever had.
Okay.
And I watched a lot of other YouTube videos, and I just thought this would be a good radio to get as a handheld. So this is the one I bought. Now the idea again is here for me, for the way I look at things, I communicate via cell phone, just like essentially everybody else does these days. But if the cell phone goes down, how are you going to communicate? And again, just think if you're outside of cell phone coverage, what are you going to do? So everybody can go buy a radio. You can buy the FRS radios. Everybody can buy them. You can buy them at
Cabela's, Shields.
Right, all of the outdoor sporting stores. You can buy them off Amazon, and they work, but they're a limited range. Again, all because of the power output. Again, FCC on FRS, they'll allow a maximum of 2 watts on those certain frequencies, and they have to drop down to half a watt on those other frequencies. And that's built into the radio. There's no way to change it. A actual Gmrs radio that is allowed to put out more power on the same frequencies. Those Gmrs radios, I actually did an internet search before I came over to you, old soldier, to help make this video. And those are actually hard to find on the internet. I went to Cabela's, I went to Shields, I went to Sportsman's Warehouse, and I couldn't find a radio labeled Gmrs.
Really?
So I think they're all just FRS. In fact, the marketing material didn't actually say what they are, other than they had the combined FRS Gmrs capability, meaning it talked on those frequencies. And yeah, they share the same frequencies, but the FCC allows the Gmrs radio to have other capabilities to the FRS radio.
Interesting.
So your backup plan, or my backup plan, besides the cell phone, is to have a radio, a walkie-talkie. But now just having the walkie-talkie doesn't help. The people you want to communicate with, they have to have that walkie-talkie or the radio as well, and you both have to know how to use it and when to use it. And so that's where you have to practice at home and become familiar. And how do you do that? Well, take yourself out of cell phone service. Go camping, go hunting, go somewhere where you can't use your cell phone, and just use the thing. Just talk back and forth. And that's the best way to do it. And
to find out the range, the capabilities.
Correct.
And even a simple Commo, like we were talking about, earlier, like if battery life is an issue, have a Commo plan.
Correct. Have a Commo plan. Now, I guess you can also do this at home. You got your family inside the house, and you're out on the back porch smoking your rack of ribs on the smoker, and you're smoking a cigar, or who knows what you're doing, but you're outside the house, they're inside the house. Well, just ask your family, instead of opening the slide door and yelling at you to come inside, just have your family practice just using a radio. Let's just communicate via the radio rather than just opening the door and yelling at me. So that way, everybody can become familiar with the radio and how to use it. Now again, this is no different than the cell phone. I mean, we're going to use our easiest method of communication that we can, and if you can just yell at somebody to get their attention, of course that's what they're going to do. But once you can't yell at them, what are you going to do then? Well, we've all come to rely on the cell phone. Okay, well now the cell phone's gone, so let's use something else. And that's where the radio comes in. So just having that radio at home and practice using it. Just find ways to use that radio and just practice with it, become familiar with it, and you'll be good.
And come up with like a simple Commo plan, like when, and then the other part of the Commo plan is the frequency. So even with the simple, even the FRS, Gmrs channels, you'd have to get your time and which channel you're going to be monitoring. And then if something happened, let's say somebody else, there's interference, or like a lot of businesses, they use Gmrs. Let's say you're traveling through an area and you'd have to have some sort of plan. Let's say you're going on, we talked a little bit about this the other day when we were having coffee. You're taking a road trip and you have 2 vehicles, a couple of Gmrs radios are great to talk back and forth on, but say you're traveling through a town, you're on a preset frequency, and maybe there's a business using it, you might have to have a plan to bump to the next frequency.
Correct.
Okay, so
Correct.
Those are all the things.
And those are all things that you would pre-plan beforehand that you would know what to do. All of a sudden we can't make Commo, we can't talk to each other.
What do we
so
do then?
What do we do? And these are all things that are planned out beforehand. Just like, well, again, in our everyday lives, the cell phone don't work. What are you going to do? There's kind of an expected thing we do when our cell phone doesn't work. And if you include a radio in that process, well, then it becomes a lot easier.
There's just something I want to touch on, and I'm guilty of this as anybody else, but, part of that, if we lose a cell phone, like I physically lose it, they're also an address book, and I was just recently, well, not recently, but I've taken the time, like family members, to memorize a couple phone numbers in case I lose in the past, everybody knew certain phone numbers, and that's going to be more and more rare. And as part of, it's a simple Commo plan, but I think having a couple of crucial phone numbers, like family members that you need to get a hold of, if something physically happens to your phone, let's say it gets dropped in a river and fried, that you can contact a family member and say, hey,
You touched on an interesting point, and maybe it's something for for the viewers to reflect upon. I know my wife's cell phone number. I do not know my children's cell phone number. Yeah. I just know what button to push on the phone.
Right.
Yep. So I know my wife's number. I don't know my kids, and I should have my children's cell phone number memorized, but I don't. I admit that.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I started to. Another cheat sheet, is to keep in a wallet or someplace, because if you're like a couple of old soldiers, our memories are starting to go to hell. It gets harder all the time. So I just want to some phrase like have a plan, know what the capabilities are, and use it. Does that? Just simple recommendations. Is that? What would your if? I got one other thing before we close. I'd like to talk about a little bit, and I got a couple on here. We've been talking about transceivers, transmitting receivers, but looking on here, I've got just a couple simple. They're just receivers radios or emergency radios that are either like this one has a light, and it has AM, FM, and it has the NOAA channel, and it can be, once again, getting this solar powered. I can leave this in the sun when I'm camping, and this is an old shortwave that there's a hand crank, but in case of emergency, just to find out situationally what's going on. You think those are a good idea?
They are. They're a great idea. Many radios, there's a lot of things being broadcasted. Now on the ham radio, the novice radio bands, you can't broadcast. So you're not going to find news stations. You're not going to find people just putting out stuff for you to listen to. You can't do that. But you can get weather stations, which is what
the
this
NOAA
is.
stuff is useful.
Yeah. And what NOAA stands for, if I try to repeat it right now, I'll mess it up. But it's weather, and it's always constantly being broadcasted. But on these amateur radio bands, no, you're not going to find news stations. You're not going to find people broadcasting. You're not going to find music. It's just there for, you can key up, you can transmit and talk to somebody.
Yeah, that's all useful stuff. Well, I think we're getting close to the end, Kirk. So can you, for somebody at home who's thinking, hey, what if I want to make my family or my group or my friends or whatever more ready for an emergency, could you it's just real simple advice? And I guess from I'm a simple guy. We serve together, so I'm a simple guy. But it's like, hey, make some choices from some equipment and use them and get to know your capabilities, and then have some sort of a Commo plan.
Okay. What I would suggest is, again, think about your cell phone and who do you want to talk to? Once you know who you want to talk to, do you both have the same equipment to be able to talk to each other? If you want to call home, does home have a phone? So yeah, I have a phone, my wife has a phone, my kids have a phone, I can call them. So think about the same thing with the radio. Who do you want to talk to? the best way to start, if you don't have any radios now, but you obviously have friends and family. So first off, ask your friends, what do your friends use? Do your friends have radios? Does your family have radios? Now, if everybody's on FRS, then of course, go buy an FRS radio and just use it. Just use it for the fun. As a hobby, which is what ham radio is supposed to be. It's a hobby. So if your friends all use FRS radios, then get yourself an FRS radio and just have fun, play the game, do whatever you want with your friends to figure out how to talk to each other. Now, of course, the range is limited. And that's okay. If that's what your friends all use, you get yourself a radio just like they have, and you all talk the same. If you have absolutely nobody that has a radio and you want to get into it, well, then buy the pair of radios, which is how you can buy all of these things now. They come in pairs or triples, but you buy them, you give them to the most important person you want to talk to, and you just you work out a way to become familiar, and you talk to each other on it. And that's great. If you want to push up the distance of being able to talk farther from each other rather than just say a mile, well, then you need a radio with more power output, and that's the GMRS radios. And so you can buy the GMRS radio. When you play around with it, you become familiar with it, you learn how to use it. If you want to jump up from there, now all these little jumps with the FCC, you get radios that have a little more capability, maybe more features, more power output, and more frequencies that you can use. So your Baofeng and your Anytone, using those amateur radio bands, amateur radio being ham radio, these radios will put out more transmission power than these. You'll have more frequencies you can choose from than these. And again, by becoming familiar with them and using them, again, it's just that backup plan from the cell phone. Again, that's my plan. I just need a backup from the cell phone.
Okay.
Now, who are you going to talk to? That's the other thing. Again, you're going to talk to your family and friends, most likely. Talking to emergency services, well, that's another. On a cell phone, that's easy. You dial 911. That's an infrastructure that was created a way time back. It's on everybody's phone. You dial 911 and you got yourself emergency services. Can you do the same with amateur radio? Now, on FRS and GRMS, there's not an emergency frequency. On the ham radios, there is what we call the national calling frequencies. Does that mean somebody's listening? No, it doesn't mean someone's listening, but it does mean that there's a frequency that you can call out on these radios.
And somebody could be listening.
And somebody could be listening to render you some aid. Now, what is, again, this radio compared to this radio compared to this radio? What is it giving you? Well, again, it costs more money for these, and you get what you pay for. The more money you spend, the more frequencies you get to use, the more features the radio will provide. This is an analog radio. It's an amateur radio. You program it with your computer, just like other modern radios. You program the frequencies on a computer. This has a keyboard on the front of it. You can program frequencies on the fly, so you don't need a computer. You can program it here, but a computer makes it a lot more friendly, a lot easier using the computer. But this is strictly analog. This is a DMR radio, so it'll transmit analog and it'll have a digital mode. That just helps with weak signal strength. The digital mode helps the receiving channel hear you a little better. It'll use the circuitry inside the radio. Talking too technical, just the DMR mode, it'll just help you out so that you can talk intelligibly with a weak signal. Now, there's other things.
Make a weak signal clear to understand.
Make a weak signal clearer, just like we'll use long-range communication on our HF radios.
Which is high frequency.
High frequency, talking long distances, no repeaters, no infrastructure, just bouncing radio waves off the ionosphere. We use Morse code instead of voice because the signal could be so weak at the receiving station that you can't hear your voice, but you can hear the Morse code, the dot, the dash. You can hear that over the signal. Well, the digital radio, DMR, the radio can pick up that weak signal and decipher it. Now, there's other things besides DMR. There's the DMR. There's
Kirk, let me just interrupt you just for a second. But no, that's fine. But once again on the Morse code, you have to have somebody who can receive and understand the Morse code.
correct.
Yep. Kirk, I think we gotta draw it to a close because we're
Correct.
running up. This is probably going to be my longest episode yet, but it was a good one. And we're going to have you back on the channel. Maybe you and I out in the woods doing something up in the mountains, doing something with these things.
Yep. I guess the best thing I can recommend for a SHTF situation, again, for me, that situation is I can't use my cell phone. So again, I'm out camping. There's no cell phone coverage. How do I talk to my friends if I can't just yell at them and let them know what I want? Well, yeah, you got to have a radio. So you just pick a radio. If you have nothing else to choose from, yeah, FRS, they're cheap, $50. You can buy 2 of them. But if you want to spend more money, you'll get more features, greater talk distance, and they're just better. So when it comes to buying a radio, buy the best one you can afford, and the best one you can afford might require you to get an FCC license, but it's not difficult to get that license either.
Okay. Hey, Kirk, I can't thank you enough. The voice of reason and experience has been there and done that. And I'm sure I was interested. Every time that we talk radios, I always learn something. And like I said, over my military career, especially in Special Forces, I saw some Commo men do some amazing things. So, hey, Kirk, I really appreciate you coming on the channel.
Thank you very much, old soldier. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll have you on again. Hey, everybody, I think that's enough for today. This is Old Soldier out.